forget all the other banks. So if Bandhan Bank had all the information, it'll be much easier for them. And agribusiness organizations with personalized, customized, timely information for a win-win situation. You see, so far, agriculture has been a zero-sum game. You gain and I lose. I was delighted to hear from Mr. Singh today that he's got a cold storage solution for 2.5 lakh rupees. Now, if that is the sort of solution that young IIT graduates can come out with, it's a win-win situation. It's a win-win, positive win-win situation, right? So I think this point Madhukarji had made earlier about how can IITs and IITians help, I think we can start by first understanding the dimensions of the problem. Governments are very good at describing problems. I mean, bureaucrats, so our job, part of our job, we're professionally trained to explain what the problem is. I mean, we may not have the solution, but we can, of course, give you the perfect reasons of why things are not happening. Okay, not a zero-sum game any longer because the cold chain changes the temporal and the spatial spectrum of the humble potato. So that's for you, especially for you, right? And I'm sure we'll work together with you on changing the, you see, because ultimately what happens, if the produce, actually what does the cold storage do? A cold storage extends the time and extends the space over which you can take your commodity to. Now, we have to see whether it is cost effective or not. I mean, you can have solutions which are so expensive that it may not make sense. I mean, we've had some very crazy, some very interesting ideas about radiation. You know, and I mean, somebody says, let's radiate the onion. The cost of, I mean, that is where the domain knowledge of agriculture is important, because somebody will have to take these onion sacks, somebody will have to, you know, put it back, somebody will have to put it back again. So the cost, the logistics, all these things have to be found out, because cost effectiveness is a very important factor. Okay, next. Now, this is the agricultural timeline, what it was in the past, what is it in the present, and what it is going to be in the future. I'll not spend much time on it because most of us are aware of how the future will be with, you know, with instant data and all these things. Let's move on to the next one. Now, I want to share with you what the government of West Bengal has done. It's a Matir Katha app, which is now available to all my agricultural development officers. One thing is very clear. I, in the sense that the agriculture department cannot reach out to 72 lakh farmers. It's an impossibility paradigm, especially because the 72 lakh farmers are not going to be doing what their grandfathers and their forefathers are doing. They will not be doing the conventional rice and the conventional maize and the conventional potato which was being done earlier. So it's a very modern application that will start happening. And in fact, this thing has won several awards, several places. So this is an agri-mobile governance, which is an agri-knowledge management portal. Move on. So this is what we have with us. So what happens is that and this is what the extension worker has, and this is what, so what happens is that any problem which the farmer has, so whether it's about a seed, whether it's about how his plant is growing, it's possible. In fact, what we are trying to showcase to you is that it is not only desirable, it is also possible. Now, we have to upscale this. Now, what it means is that today, it is possible, we have the applications to do it. To upscale it, we require a lot of capitalization. The venture capital fund, which the Pan IIT group has, that's something which is remarkable. We invite you to set up agribusiness industries. In fact, what the IT and what the digitization in agriculture does it. I mean, you have Ubers in cars. Now you have an Uber in tractors. There's a firm called Tring which is going to supply tractors. So a lot of things are possible. But how do you make these things possible is only when we come together, when we sort of work together with an open mind. And let me assure you that the government of West Bengal is quite open to new ideas, and we look forward to collaborating with you. Can you move on? So how does it impact? You see, what we do is we look at plant protection. We look at the state data bank. So what happens is that the moment a farmer sends us information or a message, it is received by the state data center. There is the agri extension. So sometimes the information would be available right on the spot. It may have to be upscaled, planning, then communication, certification, soil health card. You know, in West Bengal, we've now been able to give about half the people in the state, we've been able to give them soil health card, which is a remarkable phenomenon for us. Next. So far, we have responded to about over 2 lakh queries. We've been able to distribute about 39 lakh soil health cards. We've been able to respond in Bangla, Nepali. English is basically for my benefit. It's not for the benefit of the farmers, but because we run the system, we need to get the data there. And also because we need to make presentations all across, to showcase how good we are. That's how we win all these awards. So that's it. What I'm trying to showcase to you is that digital empowerment in agriculture has arrived. It's only that the scaling up will require a certain degree of capitalization. And more importantly, we know that these things can be done. For instance, I know now that the state can do with 1,000 custom hiring centers. Each custom hiring center is about 1 crore to 3 crore rupees. Now, this opportunity is there. So it's an opportunity that's waiting to be tapped. Right. We know that there are value chains that are available. We know today, for instance, through mapping, that which are the areas where our organic products can go. They can go to the Middle East, they can go to Japan, but we need value chains for that. So these are all things which, I do not want to go longer and longer. I thought the purpose of a keynote is to bring some things to focus and leave some things for further discussion. So with these few words, let me thank PAN IIT for having given me this opportunity to address the IITians. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Chopra. First, we started a little late and the rains came down upon us. What my guru says is, in any event, if it starts raining, that is very good omen. The other thing is, Dr. Chopra started this thing very well. Well begun means half done. Now the balance will be coming from Mr. Shiv Kumar, the Divisional Chief Executive of the Agribusiness and IT at ITC. And then, of course, Mr. C.S. Ghosh will be coming on the third front, the third angle of the triangle, which is the financial angle. Mr. Shiv Kumar, please.
Thank you. Very good morning, friends. I think it's always a pleasure to follow Dr. Chopra in any session, if you were to talk, because he lays the land so well and the foundation is built, you just need to put some pillars on top. And obviously we'll have Mr. Ghosh setting up the cover and terrace in due course. Firstly, I think, as already said, of the various themes that PAN IIT chose, it's very appropriate that East has been chosen for agriculture. How a number of times it is said, I think it is always worthwhile reinforcing and endorse it once again, because it's not just another green revolution that possibly East can bring, but potentially an evergreen revolution. The kind of resources that one has in this region and continuing natural resources that are going to get replenished and renewed, it is unlike other parts where we had seen first round of green revolution and are right now very concerned about the current situation in terms of groundwater depletion and so on that we already heard about. So I think from that perspective, it's very, very appropriate in terms of why Eastern region is chosen, and hopefully, in fact, the only reason I am here today is because, this is called as a beginning to actually put something on the ground. It's not just one more event where people come and talk and then walk away, but hopefully actually take on some initiatives on the ground to translate the ideas into action, and a venture fund is going to be put in place. I think unless we translate all of these thoughts into some real action, it's not really worth anyone's while to have obviously events after events. I think that is something very promising, and I hope to see and stay engaged with all that. From 1/6 of a tax to 1/3 of a tax today we're actually technically in a no tax situation. Farmers are not taxed on the face of it in this country. And yet, we have a situation where the per capita income of the farmer is just about 1/5 of all the rest of us. You know, numbers like 15% GDP or half of all workforce in agriculture, all of that are well known. I mean, obviously, if you just flip it around and calculate per capita GDP as a surrogate to per capita income, then that's the number you get. The other half of the workforce has 85% of GDP, and therefore that really translates into income in some form. Now, even if we correct the situation of incomes, the call given by the Prime Minister to double farmers' income in the next 5 years by 2022, faster than we have been able to do in the past, will probably get us there. But even after getting there, do we think the youth of this country is seriously interested in agriculture? Most people that one talks to say that, no, we would rather go out of agriculture. Yeah, there are very interesting new set of people who are walking into agriculture from very different sets of fields. That's a very positive kind of a signal. But if you ask any farming family, it is very unlikely that people have that kind of an interest. The dignity of labor that is associated with farming has dwindled over time. And as a society, I think we are doing injustice there, as it is also with a few other professions. But I think for today, let's keep to agriculture. And so therefore, these results, despite zero tax situation. And now at a broader level, the reason why we are saying an evergreen revolution someplace and concern with other parts of India is because the depletion of natural resources, in some sense as it is, we are as a nation blessed with fewer resources than many other parts of the world. We are 17% of all people, but only 4% of world's freshwater resources. Only 2.5% of world's land resources. So on top of that, if we are letting runoff, topsoil erosion, and obviously water depletion, all of that is an unsustainable situation. So not only with respect to farmers' incomes, next generation's interests, but also at a macro level, we have a serious issue. World over, some of you would be familiar with what's called an Earth Overshoot Day. It's a measure that the resources that we consume by 31st of December every year, how long do we take to replenish those natural resources? So a reasonable balance is by 31st of December, we'll consume what we can produce. If you have a personal income and expenditure statement, you say that, yeah, I earn 100 rupees, I spend 100 rupees by end of the month. In a very similar manner for Earth as a whole, that's how the sheet should look like. But as we went along, about 30 years ago when we started measuring this, it was still one of those late December dates which was still there. But last year in 2016, it was August 9th. That means by August 9th, we were consuming all resources that we can produce by 31st of December, natural resources. That means from 10th of August until 31st of December, we were actually living on borrowed resources, borrowed from our children and grandchildren. So that's obviously the unsustainable situation. So when we are talking about agriculture, I think these are the kind of things that one must keep in mind. Now, why has this situation come to this stage? Despite enormous success, excellent policy measures that worked, and therefore we became self-sufficient in food. What is the reason? And what can digital do about it? Is what I'll now talk about, given the enormity of situation that I just built. A couple of things changed very fundamentally from the time much of this policy framework was put in place in India and achieved all the success, most notably Green Revolution, but there are many other colors to this revolution. We had a Great White Revolution, we had a Blue Revolution, and more recently we call Rainbow Revolution, and so on. So I think there are many kinds of revolutions that India achieved in agriculture, riding on obviously very entrepreneurial farmers and the policy framework, because it's essentially government which led agriculture so far, other than the farmers themselves who are in the private sector. The role played by the rest of the private sector is very, very small. Two things are fundamentally changing over the last few years. And in some sense, policy as well as private action is still living in yesterday. The transition pangs are what is hurting us. The change in policy, which should have happened 20 years ago, we are still taking one step forward and two steps back. What are these fundamental changes? Like we already heard from Dr. Chopra, a starving nation looks at just producing more. And then obviously sell whatever that you produce because there is a ready market for that. So most part of effort in this period was in expanding production. Initially with expansion of agricultural land, bringing in irrigation, raising crop intensity, high-yielding varieties or hybrids that raise productivity, and so on. So all of this led to a production, and as a country, we have built what are called production-driven supply chains. You produce and then move it to the market, and whatever moves to the market gets bought and consumed or gets distributed through the fair price shops and so on. Now, as we have evolved, as the incomes rose, as the awareness expanded, there are segments of consumers, and that's becoming more sizable number at this point of time, are looking for more variety in the food being consumed. Cereals in the diet composition are making place for more milk, meat, vegetables, fruits, and so on. Better quality, because all of this are not only just the demands of a new consumer, but a very large segment of consumers are able to and willing to pay for that. And therefore, that demand is getting created. And people are looking for safety. You walk around and talk to mid to higher income segment of consumers. The most critical concern today is what is the pesticide content in this? What is the heavy metal content in this? What is some other preservative that got added to it? Because everything else I can look and see. Because is this a good looking potato or a tomato or an onion, I can look and make out, but what is inside I can't make out. And everybody eats the same thing. So at one generation maybe we developed enough immunity, but children, old age people, everybody have their own challenges in a food like this. So food safety has become a major concern as well. And of course convenience. As the way of living is changing, more urbanization is occurring, there is more and more convenience that is being sought, both in buying as well as in consuming. So I think there are a set of needs that the evolving consumer is wanting, and production-driven supply chains are ill-equipped to service these needs. You need a demand-driven value chain. There are different sets of consumers in India based on levels of income, where they live and what they consume and so on, and you need to reach out and products that make sense to each segment very differently. Putting together a system of that kind requires a number of actions on part of the businesses, certainly to make them happen, a lot of policy changes, All of them need to happen. And that fundamental change is something which is creating an issue. If you say that potatoes are selling at 40 rupees a kilo at one point of time, and farmers say, yeah, it makes great sense, let me go for more potato. By the time it is harvested, you are seeing a price of 2 rupees for the farmer. I mean, it's happening across products at some point of time or other in different parts of the country for one or the other perishables. The fundamental reason is this, that we haven't transited yet into a demand-driven value chain. So let me come back a little later in terms of what can digital do about all this. The second fundamental shift that is occurring, again, let me juxtapose that with whatever that happened in a Green Revolution era. Like I said, here is irrigation, bring more land into cultivation,